Hey guys, welcome back. So I'm working on the engine that I pulled out of the Z, and I'm pulling the old wiring harness off the motor, and I'm going to put the new wiring harness that I got on the motor. Figured I'd show you a little bit about what's going on. So this motor, being it's in my race car, I don't have AC or any of that stuff, so the accessory drive and all that stuff is pretty simple and basic. So there's a lot of things that make it easier for me to pull the motor out of this car than if it wasn't a race car. Coolant hoses and things like that. I've got the coolant hose rerouted back into itself, because before it would just go into the car for the heater core, but I eliminated the heater core, so this can just kind of loop back around and go back into itself. We've got a wiring harness that comes all the way down. This goes back into the car, connects to the ECU. It also wraps around the transmission, so I'm just going around, taking it all off the transmission, going to be taking it off the motor. There's a wiring harness that clips into this harness that goes down for the fuel injectors and stuff, and I can leave that one. But the main one that I was having an issue with was this guy right here. This was a cam sensor, and I ended up rewiring the cam sensor, even had to get a brand new cam sensor. The clip had broken, so I glued it to it. No matter what I did, I couldn't get the cam sensor light to go away, which ends up pulling timing on the car, which ends up losing me, 10 to 15 horsepower at the peak. So it was kind of detrimental to racing, losing power and having that issue. So I'm going to replace the harness. Hopefully that's the only problem. It actually might be in the ECU as well. So if the ECU is bad, I've got another one, but I will have to get it reprogrammed. Yeah, so just going through, going to clean this up a little bit, taking the old harness off, putting the new harness on, and hopefully that ends up working and we get the power back. While I'm at it, I'm going to be redesigning how I want my air to come into the brakes for brake ducting. It's always came from the front of the car. It's a huge pain in the butt that it destroys the tubes constantly. The air duct tubing is getting destroyed all the time. So I need to come up with a little bit better solution. I think if I just come right off this back side here and have the air coming in like I did on this other side, I think it might work out really well, and it didn't seem to destroy the tube anymore. So if I can get away with that, that'd be pretty nice. Overall, it's kind of cool to just see underneath the car, see all the things that I've done to it. And, it's a great chassis. I think this 350Z chassis is honestly underrated. It's honestly probably the transmission is the weak point of the car because it's a 6-speed, it's not a close ratio. So if it was a different transmission, it'd probably work a little bit better, but I'm going to try to make it up by building a motor. The motor isn't here, so I'm just going to make do with what I've got until it does show up. Hopefully getting this sensor issue fixed resolves some horsepower and makes the car a little bit more fun to drive again. What's going on again, guys? I've got another little side project on the Z. I've got my manifolds. I figured I'd wrap them because it gets really hot in the engine bay, so I figured I'd show you. So here's the manifolds, and here's some headers. And so, these are the cat delete pipes. My old cat delete pipes started breaking and I had exhaust leaks. So I figured I'd go with a whole new setup. I've got some DC headers. I've got some brand new down pipes, wrapped them all up. That way I can keep some of that heat out of the engine bay. I'm gonna put them all back together. Let's slap them on the engine right here. Now, this motor still needs the wiring harness, so I'm waiting on the new wiring harness. I'll put the exhaust on, and I can literally, I'm done at that point. Harness, exhaust, drop the car back down on top of the motor, get it all buttoned up, and then just start putting everything together. I also decided to order a new rear diff, and I've got this whole pumpkin with the stock 353 ratio in it with a NISMO 1.5 Pro. I'm going to be going with a Z1 R200 race version diff inside a pumpkin with 4.08 gears. That way I'll have two whole separate pumpkins I can just swap out depending on what track I'm on and whether I want what gears. I wanted to try the 408s. I could have thrown them in this pumpkin, but for not much more money, I can just get a whole new pumpkin with new axles and all that stuff, and it's all ready to go. And with the track I'm at, I figured that 408 ratio should max out at about 140 miles an hour in fifth gear, maybe a little bit less, but the most I usually get going in this car right now is like 128. But the 408 should be able to get me to that speed quicker. So maybe by the end of the straight, I'm not quite as fast as this car, but at the beginning, I'm way faster. And that's where like the BMWs were beating me, was off the line everywhere. So I figured maybe if I go to a 408, we can see how that does. Also putting, you know, some new exhaust manifolds, or I guess headers instead of manifolds, so that I get a little bit more airflow. Retune the car to that, or at least dyno it and see where we're at, see what kind of improvements it helps. And then when I get the new motor, then I can dyno tune the motor. That way, hopefully I can get like a lot more power than I get out of this one, and run ST3 if I want. And then I think I mentioned before, I could end up doing a whole entire different AERO kit in ST3, so I could come up with kind of some other much larger front splitter. I could run some more downforce force in the rear on the wing, and then I could open up. I've got, let's check this out. I've got these front fenders that are all cut out, but that I can't use in ST4 because of the tire I'm running, so that I could end up having all the aero. I can push these back in so that I have more aero coming off the side of the car, and just kind of make the car a little bit more aerodynamic with more power. And I could go to ST3, and some of the friends that I race with are in ST3, not ST4. So it'd be kind of fun to be able to go back and forth between both classes in this car. But my primary objective is definitely to get this to be as peak ST4 as I can. You know, I don't know that anybody else has really been able to do that in a DE motor, but I was very, very close at Nationals. I know exactly where I'm, you know, where my discrepancy to them is, and I know exactly how to make it up. So as long as I can get the motor to do that, then we'll be there. And it might not just be motor. That rear diff change might really, really help. You know, coming off those short, basically every single place that there was a short straight, I mean, they just motored past me. The second we hit apex, they could just get on throttle and motor me. And so that's what I've got to be able to come up with this car. If I can even just somewhat hang with them there, then I can easily beat them into the corners, or in the corners and into the corners in braking. My car was far superior than theirs in all that aspect. They just were able to get the drive off the corner. So that's the goal. That's where I need to be in ST4. And then ST3, it would probably be more of a bottom tier ST3 car, unless the new motor can make a ton more power. And then the aero would help out a lot as well. So we'll see how it goes. Really excited to keep trying, and just the hardest part is putting yourself in a position where you have people to race. And there's just so many groups in NASA. I feel like they've kind of overdone it. There's too many race groups, and so there's too many times where I have even 10 or 15 cars on track, but I'm only racing like 1 or 2 other cars, and that's kind of a bummer. So the goal is to make it so I can jump back and forth between groups where maybe there's more competition that weekend versus another, or something like that. But wish me luck. It's moving forward. I've got a lot of parts that need to show up before race weekend. Race weekend's like 2 weeks, so hopefully it all gets put together in time. Take care.